quote I've found I've seen somewhere on Twitter was, "Don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle."
Yes.
That's a very good one.
Also a good one. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Lynne, so let's just kick it off. Can you
Sure.
please tell us a little bit about yourself and what are you working on currently?
Yeah, so my name is Lynn and I live in San Francisco. About 6-7 months, I started a project called Key Values. So previously I was freelancing as a web developer for 2.5 years, and I sat down to look for a full-time job. And that experience was just so terrible. And I was like, had a lot of anxiety and it was really stressful, but mainly it was just frustrating because I couldn't find any information about the teams that I was applying to, like who I'd be working with, how we'd be working together, and like what the day-to-day would actually look like. And so yeah, that was kind of how Key Values came to be. I wanted to create a product that would help job-seeking engineers find teams that shared their values rather than searching by salary or company reputation or company size. I think those things are important, but for a lot of people like myself, they're just, I mean, it doesn't matter so much. It's not the breaking point in deciding where you want to work. So yeah, I've been working on Key Values for the last 6-7 months, full time probably for 4 or 5 months, and yeah.
I came upon your post or article on dev.io, and it's really interesting how you made the mind shift of just stopping to postpone stuff and then actually get working on that project. Can you just give us a little bit of context of that time? Like, how did you make that mind shift? Did you read something or did you watch something?
Yeah, no, that's tricky. I don't know if it was like a switch. Sometimes there's like a eureka moment. It wasn't like that so much. So actually, one of my good friends, Cortland Allen, he created Indie Hackers. Have you guys heard of Indie Hackers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things. There was like momentum from that, or just inspiration from that. So I think I've always kind of deep down inside wanted to start something of my own. And I mean, a lot of people who end up freelancing are kind of have that itch too. They just want a little bit more freedom or more control over their schedule and the type of work they're doing. So I think that was like the gateway into being an entrepreneur. But posting, I think it was just realizing like building an audience is something that's important, and being like, just like what you guys are doing, you want to connect with people who are doing something at a similar stage. And I think that's the best way to do that. Previously, I was pretty shy on the internet, if that makes sense. Like I would read things, like, yeah, what's called indie lurking, right? Like you read all the inspiring stories. I don't even like comment on people's posts, but I would read them, I would share them. Sometimes I would reread them. But I was just never participating. I was just a spectator. So I think it's just over time, I realized that I wanted to participate. And then finally, I just mustered the courage to do it.
But that's super cool. About your freelancing experience, that's very fascinating to me. You're also, as far as I understood, a self-taught coder. So are we as well. Can you share a little bit about how was life as a freelancer?
Freelancing was really interesting for so many reasons. I think it was just also the first time I had done that type of work. I think the coolest thing, there's like lots of trade-offs. The bad parts about freelancing is the feast or famine phenomena, where like you have a lot of work and you don't know how to juggle everything. And then there are times where you don't have any work. So I was lucky enough to find a client that I had long-term, that I was like essentially a full-time employee, like they treated me as one. But we would just touch base every 3 months and talk about how to renew our contract, which was better than if you think as a full-time employee, usually there's like an annual review. So you have to wait 12 months to, discuss how things are going and like maybe if you should change, like ask for promotion or anything like that. So I liked having more feedback more often. But the main thing that freelancing taught me was the big mind shift was thinking about how you're trading time for money. And it was like this crazy thing where I started feeling like on the weekends, if I was, okay, so this is kind of like a tangent, but when people invite you to something and you don't really know them and you feel kind of obligated to go, but you don't really feel excited about it. It was like stuff like that. I realized that I was like 3 hours of that is not worth, 3 hours times my rate. Like I just like started thinking about things in terms of hours because I was billing by the hour. So that was really interesting. But overall, I think freelancing is a really great way to go, and it gives you so much more control over like who you're working with, how much you work, when you work, and where you work.
And how did you come about the approach to those clients?
Yeah, so this is where it's like I wish I had better advice. I was just kind of lucky. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it. I feel like the main thing I did was just tell everyone I knew that I was going to do contract work as a web developer. And I mean, it's pretty common if you're working at a company, especially in the Bay, where you bite off more than you can chew, and your team's like really overloaded. And then your team's like, does anyone know anyone who can help us for 3 months? And you just want to make sure your name is the first name that comes to mind. So I just told like all of my friends, all of their friends, I would broadcast it. So every once in a while, even my friends that weren't developers, they'd be like, oh, I think we need like someone to program the things. Do you do that? Like, do you know HTML, CSS? I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I know that. So I would get jobs like that. And then eventually it was word of mouth, and yeah, it just kind of picked up from there. But the first clients one of my first clients I actually found over Twitter, and I wasn't even active on Twitter yet. Someone had showed me. That was really cool. I DM'd her, got on the phone, and the next day we were like starting a 1 week, trial, and that worked out great.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And you started programming in 2015, is that right?
Yeah.
So what did you start learning first? I'm really curious about that because as a self-taught programmer as well, I try to get a lot of people excited about coding because I think it's very easy to start today. So I wonder what your path was.
So I guess it's like slightly cheating. I wouldn't say I'm totally self-taught. I actually did a boot camp. I did dev boot camp. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they actually, I think they're folding now, or they're closing. Okay. But in 2015, I decided to do the program. And the reason why it's like pseudo is because I actually left the program in the middle. So I didn't graduate or complete the program. But anyways, so Dev Bootcamp, I think their curriculum was first Ruby. Because it's the most like English. Like it's pretty, yeah. And then I think we spent like 1 week with JavaScript, which I wish we had spent more time learning. And then like 1 week with HTML, CSS, but mainly it was Ruby and Ruby on Rails.
How intense are those? I've heard of them because I also learned it, but I did it online, kind of by myself. So how intense, extensive is that the boot camp? Is it like a full day of work or?
Yeah, it's so I think I can't even remember. I think it's 9 weeks remote, like on your own, doing it like doing it from the comfort of your home at whenever you want on the weekends or something. And then there's the 9 week intensive. So everyone moves to San Francisco, and for 9 weeks you go in every day. It's probably like 9 to 5 p.m. or 9 to 6 p.m. But most people stay like 9 to 9. And for me, it's expensive. So for me, it was like, I'm going to be there like 90-hour weeks. You can go, it's open on the weekends. So I was just, I was all in. And I actually think that I probably took it more seriously than some people. Like I personally was very intense about it because I was like, this is expensive. So I tried to get my money's worth, that's for sure.
So how did you decide to make the switch from learning to actually start to practicing it? Did you feel comfortable doing some things and then you started looking for clients?
That's a good question. I think, to be honest, there was a lot of like imposter syndrome. Like I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. The first gigs, I had some help also. So I'm friends with a lot of developers. My boyfriend's a software engineer. And Cortland, also my good friend, he was also very hands-on in helping me when I needed some help. I think I wasn't really ready, but I just went for it. And then it was over time, it was one of those things where I was like, people are paying me and they're not complaining about the work I'm doing. So maybe I do know what I'm doing. And then, just gradually over time, I think I felt more comfortable. I don't know, again, there's not like a switch where I was like, today I'm ready.
I mean, completely understand. I think I'm still in that phase. I think people are not complaining. Do I know what I'm doing? I don't know. Let's just continue doing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole fake it till you make it. But at some point you realize like even, if you remember not knowing how to code at all, even someone who knows a little bit more is very valuable because of all the work it takes to learn. So I think it's just good about being, as long as you're upfront about your abilities. And that's why I really felt comfortable with contracting, because it's kind of like, here, let's try it for a week. And if we're both happy, we'll continue. Versus if you sign full time, it's like a much bigger commitment. So yeah, I think that, and it's funny because that's kind of related to key values now. It's like, I think that signing a full-time offer is like a really big commitment. I think it's like marriage, you know? It's like who you're spending most of your waking hours with. And it's frowned upon to quit after 3 months and change jobs, you know? So I think freelancing kind of like, it's acceptable to do a short-term project, see how it goes, and then decide to continue or, you know, part ways.
Can you tell a little bit more, like, you know, in a sentence or in a tweet, the gist of what key values is?
Yeah, there's a couple ways to do it, but I would say key values helps job-seeking engineers find teams that share their values.
Right. And what led you to that realization, that there is a better way to find a team as a developer to work in?
I think I've always kind of felt that way. And I will say that it's not better for everyone. So like there's a lot of people who only care about the compensation, you know, how much equity they're getting, how much their salary is, and that's all. That's like the number one, number two. But there's a lot of people, and for that subset, I think it is better. I think I've always kind of known that. Like, so before I learned how to code, before I started doing startup stuff at all, I was in grad school, and the first year of grad school is rotations. So everyone for their entire first year is just working in different labs for 3 months, 3-4 months. And then they do 3 to 5 of those before they join a lab, like, and commit, you know, 4 to 10 years or however long it takes to do your PhD. And so I think I'm just like used to that type of model where you really get to know a team before you join them. So it was really odd to go from that to, you know, the working world where you do some calls with a recruiter who you won't be working with, and then you do a take-home test in isolation, and then you do an interview with like 2 people where there's no talking. They're just like quizzing you, you know, they're grilling you, and then you eat lunch, and then you have to decide if you want to be exclusive with these people. And I think it's just like very odd to me. So in a way, I've kind of always felt that way. And then on the flip side, I mentioned my boyfriend. I mentioned he's a software engineer, but he's also a startup founder. So it was kind of like the time when I was looking for jobs, and it was just like not all the questions I wanted to ask. There was just no way to get to them until I did all the steps of the interview. And then also hearing him complain about how hard it is to hire engineers. And like, you know, people, you do all the work on both sides. And then sometimes like a week into hiring, you realize there's like an obvious mismatch. What do you do? Like make it work, I guess, like try to make it work. It's just, yeah, it's just no one wins in that situation. So
How do you?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I just felt like there had to be something better. Like I think everyone wants that information. It just seems like it's so buried in the process. I just wanted to reorder it so you would get to talk about some of those things up front before you go through, you know, the technical screens, the whiteboarding, the on-site interviews. Yeah.
And are you getting the information about the companies? I mean, is it an automated system that you kind of getting this? Because I mean, they can write everything on their website, but then those might not be the values actually that they're looking for.
Yeah, so no, it's not automated. It's not scraped. It's really hands-on. I'm getting lots of it, you know, a lot of people in Silicon Valley are like, that's so not scalable. But at the same time, it's like, there's no other way.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, in the beginning, I was like interviewing engineers and engineering managers. And then I would do like 6 hours of research, read all of their Glassdoor reviews, look up everyone on LinkedIn, see like who's on the team now, what did they do before, definitely read their website. If they had a technical blog, I'd read every post. Like I would do all my homework as if I was interested in applying. And then I would do these interviews. And then I'm embarrassed to say that I would then transcribe the interviews, and then just like try to, you know, make sense of these, like put it into words that was readable and kind of accessible, and then work with them to see if they like approved of them. But basically, that's, I mean, that was like a lot of work. Today, companies, I work with them and we share like a Google Doc and we go back and forth about, you know, the values that they've chosen, and I ask them questions, and it's a lot of like tough love usually, where I'm like, this isn't really enough. Like to say like everyone here really, you know, values work-life balance is like not enough, you know. So I want to ask like, what's a typical day of an engineer? Like, do you ever find someone here past 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. or are people working on weekends? What's the on-call like process like? And yeah, so it's just like a lot of like, do people work from home? Do people work remotely? Is there flexibility there? So no, it's not. It's not automated. It takes a lot of time, each one.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's the only way to properly do it. And so the values that we see on the website, are they your opinion of the company once you interview them, or is it a mix between what they're saying about themselves and then you confirm that on the?
Wait, will you say that one more time? The values on the website,
Is it
you mean the full list?
Yeah, I mean the final result of the description of the company, is it your opinion of the company after the interview process, or is it a combination between what they say about themselves and what you think and confirm?
I see. It's 100% what they like. They control. They select their own values and they write the content, or they like, at least in the beginning they would definitely approve the content, but they always select their own values. The only times I will suggest something different is if they really struggle to qualify a value. Like if you can't talk about it in a paragraph, you probably don't really like follow through, or that value doesn't translate really into your daily behaviors if you can't actually talk about it. So that's the only time that I'll suggest something different, but otherwise it's really up to them. And I know there's lots of questions, right? Like you're asking, like, you know, they can say whatever they want. How do you know if it's accurate? And that part's really interesting. In the beginning, that took me a lot of time because I was very concerned with accuracy. But ultimately, I think what I'm trying to do is I'm basically interviewing, like as if I'm a job seeker applying to these companies. I'm doing that interview that's buried down the process, like after the phone screens, after the whiteboarding, after the coding challenges, that interview where you get to ask the company about, you know, who they are, what they're like. And then, of course, in the same, when you interview at a company, like they can say whatever they want, right? Like it's, I mean, ultimately it's up to the individual to decide if it's true. And so all I'm doing is getting that information, putting it in one place, making it really searchable. And then it's really ultimately up to a job seeker to read it and see if they are convinced. And I won't say who, but I think some profiles are like A+ and others are like a B. Like they're not as, they don't do as good of a job like I'm not as convinced with what they're saying as well. Obviously I can't, you know, I work back and forth a lot until I get something pretty good, but yeah, so I mean, I think it's like I have that judgment too. So I think it's like really up to you to read them and see and compare. I mean, it's really easy to look at different teams describe the same value, and you can kind of see like it's kind of just like a structure for people to fill in themselves, and you get to an idea of who they are just the way that they even write about it. Yeah.
How do you go about the access, to gaining access to these companies, and how do you earn their trust to open up and give you access to their employees? To ask them those hard questions, I assume.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting, it's evolved a lot. In the very beginning, I basically exhausted my network. Like I live in San Francisco, I know lots of engineers. I've worked with engineers from my freelance work and also from previous companies before I was a web developer myself. So you know, it was like asking lots of favors, and in the beginning, it was like, once I realized how to pitch it, companies wouldn't say no, because it was basically like, hi, I'm Lynn. Would love to work for you for free to help you hire engineers, which everyone is trying to do. And like, it's like, I'll do all of the work. I'll just come in and interview you for an hour or so, and then I'll do all of the heavy lifting and writing, and then all you have to do is like review it. So I think most people were like, okay, that sounds good. So it was mainly just like me working a lot. And then I think just everyone knowing that they have control over their profile makes them trust, like, you know, they trust it. And yeah, now people have been emailing me, which has been great. And it's usually people who are like this obviously resonates with them and they're really interested in it. And I will say that there's a lot of self-filtering. Like if you aren't willing to invest the time and energy into creating a profile, because they are, you know, it's not something you do quickly. Yeah, then they don't end up following through. So a lot of like just having a profile and key values, I think says a lot about the team. Like the fact that they care. Yeah.
Yeah. How long after you started? So from day one, was the moment when you got the first company that approached you, not not the other way around.
Right. It was after launch.
Right.
That was like that was a light switch. Like, so I basically was like, I would travel, bring my camera just in case they didn't have photos. I would, as I said, I would do like the 8 hours, whatever, of research, preparing questions, go record the interview, transcribe. Like I did all of that. And then the day that I launched it, like I never had to do that again.
Okay.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So like, yeah, I haven't had to do that since launching. It was September 5th.
And how do you, just tying into that, how did you go, do you go about promoting the company and the vision?
Oh no, sorry, I think you broke up.
Can you hear me now? Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, say it again.
Yeah. How do you go about promoting the company?
How do I go about onboarding?
Promoting.
Oh, promoting. That's the hard part that I'm struggling with now. So I was gonna say, you guys are probably familiar, like there's the post-launch trough of sorrow. Like the day you launch, there's a lot of excitement and traffic, and then it dies down. So right now, my strategy is content marketing, which is going like okay, just because I'm kind of slow to write articles and posts.
Is it only you or you're working with other
Oh
people?
yeah, it's just me. So yeah, it just takes me a while, and I think I kind of get in my head about what to write about.
Yeah.
Like, do people care? Is it interesting? And then I'm a little bit of a perfectionist where I'll reread and edit an article for a really long time, and then I'll end up not even publishing it. But that's my current strategy, is content marketing.
Nice. Are you considering this type of medium other than at the moment?
So you said you saw my post on, so my first article ever was for indie hackers, because that's kind of like where it all started for me. It felt appropriate. And then I actually just kind of on a fluke cross-posted it to dev.to, which is, I guess, where you saw the article. And then the next one I wrote for, I got most of my traffic from Hacker News launching. So I also, it's weird. I feel like I have like a relationship with these communities, but like I owe, like it's like a person. Like I'm like, I owe Hacker News this article. So I wrote Hacker News a post and it was on Medium. And then I also kind of cross-posted that on dev.to. But yeah, that one also got, I got approached by Hacker Noon to include my story in their publication. That was really cool. And yeah, I think there's a few more audiences I'd like to get involved with. Yeah, so don't have a, like I'm kind of just exploring still which ones are the right audience. Like for example, indie hackers is a great community, but they're not my ideal target audience because most of those people, even though they're developers, they want to quit their jobs and start a business. They're not trying to quit their jobs and find a new job. So they're great for feedback, but they're not my ideal audience.
And when you think about the target audience, how do you to differentiate that from all these platforms and all these communities? You have these different types of people always in the same place. You have the starters, you have people for just a new gig. How do you differentiate your content that appeals to the right?
I think that's a little bit of just being active on whatever community, like Reddit, for example, is like very different from Product Hunt. Product Hunt is very different from Hacker News. And you kind of get a feeling just based on like being in those communities and seeing how people interact with each other. Like if you look at a Product Hunt launch and you see the comments versus a Show HN, the comments, it's very, you can tell it's just like a very different community and the culture of that community is very different. So I think it's kind of guessing with those, and sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm not. Yeah, I think Hacker News it's interesting. My guess is that the people who are most active and like comment, at least they're the ones it makes me at first think that they're not the right audience. They're people who care. So I call it mercenaries versus missionaries. And Key Values is really built for missionaries, people who are not motivated by money primarily. And I think just based on the comments in Hacker News, there was a while where I thought maybe Hacker News wasn't the right audience because a lot of people complain that there's no salaries listed on Key Values, and there's no funding level listed on Key Values, and those things I think are not as important to, say, missionaries. But just looking at how users referred from Hacker News interact on my site, I think there's a lot of people who are the appropriate audience. So I think it's a little bit of trial and error, but then I do have data based on traffic and the behavior of users and how they interact with my site. So obviously there's a lot of people who do like Key Values from Hacker News that just don't comment.
Do you, interesting, do you have any data on most combination of values?
Wait, sorry, can you say that again?
Do you have data on most combination of values?
Yeah, so my second post was sharing some of that data. It's actually really interesting. So that's the one that I wrote for Hacker News. I basically look at what Hacker News readers look for in a job just based on the values that they select. And then I break them down based off of country, and I also compare them to audiences like Dev.to and Product Hunt. And it confirms a lot of the ideas that people have about those communities. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like spoiler alert, I guess, just the number 1 and number 2 values across any community, any country, doesn't matter how you break down the data, it's always work-life balance and high quality code base, which I think is not surprising, but also so surprising that it's just those are the clear 2 things that people care about and are looking for.
And how are you going to collecting this data in tracking?
Oh, I use both Google Analytics and Amplitude. Yeah, and they are strong in different ways. But
what's Amplitude? I'm not familiar with it.
Oh yeah, Amplitude is it's just another analytics. It's for websites to track. It's easier for looking at user segmentation and how you can look based on events, and you can create your own events, and it's really easy to integrate. I guess Google Analytics is as well. I'm actually still kind of getting familiar with Amplitude, but actually Amplitude is, the founders went to school with me, and I originally interviewed them for a profile, so they're also on Key Values. And then once I started using their product, I was like, wait, this is so much cooler than I it's really powerful. So highly recommend it if you guys haven't checked out. It's really easy to set up, and you don't have to pay until much later.
We'll check it out for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm curious, you just mentioned that that's a funny thing that Amplitude were also on your platform. Do companies that you're working with consider this as a marketing opportunity, being on Key Values?
I think so. I mean, yeah, right? In the beginning, I think it was a huge favor because I didn't exist yet. And it's, it's risky to invest time on something you don't know if it's going to just be thrown away. But now I do think so. I mean, I obviously our values are aligned. I want traffic, and I want people to discover these teams that are really great and are maybe, you've never heard of Amplitude, but maybe you should. And I think they're also seeing the same thing. They want people to visit their profile and learn more about their company. And I think even people who aren't interested in applying, it's still good. Coverage, visibility.
Absolutely. I want to shift a little bit to something outside of the tech world and a little bit of your professional and career focus to another thing that caught my eye. That's your Ironman preparation.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So that's why I have the bike. So yeah, I'm training for an Ironman. It is scarily soon. It's my first Ironman. It's November 26th in Cozumel, Mexico. Yeah, it's, for people who don't know, I guess it's a 2.4 mile swim, open water swim, followed by a 112-mile bike ride, and then you finish with just a short little marathon, 26.2 miles of running. Yeah, that's it's been an interesting year, guys.
How are you preparing for it? How long have you been preparing for it?
So basically, I really decided, so I never done a triathlon until March, April maybe, I can't remember. So I had like a little bit of a freak out earlier this year in March. Yeah, I can like, the TLDR is just like, I had a little moment. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. And so I decided to do an Ironman and then also try to start a business basically in the same like weeks, 2 week span. So then I was like, all right, 2017, like I'm only doing these two things. I'm cutting everything out. Like no more barbecues, no more birthdays, no more housewarmings, like no social life, basically. It's just like key values and Ironman training, and that's it. But yeah, it's been kind of, it's good because obviously, you know, when you work, you sit a lot and you're inside a lot. So I think it's kind of actually been really smart almost that I have this other thing that makes me, you know, go outside and work out and make sure I'm not just, because it's really easy sometimes for me to just want to work for like 30 hours straight. I forget to eat, forget to sleep. So I think it's good to have this other thing that helps me keep some type of schedule. But yeah, it's been interesting. We'll see how it goes.
How do you manage it? Do you have like a plan? Let's say every day you do 2 hours of that, 1 hour of that. Is there a program or a plan to it?
There was, but I haven't really stuck with it. It's so bad. Oh man, it's yeah, there was this training schedule that I was like religiously sticking to it in the first couple of months. And then when I did my first half Ironman, it was like, oh, that went better than I thought, which was dangerous because then I got a little cocky and I was like, I don't think I need to train this hard. Like I can skip some workouts here and there. And yeah, it'll be interesting. I think my goal is just to complete the race. I'm not, in the beginning I was like, I want to get sub 14 hours or like whatever. And now I'm just like, I'm fine if I walk a little bit, maybe a bit. As long as I finish before the cutoff, I'll be happy.
Perfect. Regarding the Ironman, who hooked you up to that? Did you find out yourself or a friend?
So yeah, I guess this kind of goes back. So my freak out in March was basically, yeah, this happens to me from time to time where I just kind of have, it's like, people say it's like the quarter life crisis, which I actually had a legitimate quarter life crisis before. So that it wasn't that, but it was like a mini little, I don't know what happened. I just felt like, what am I doing with my life? Like I'm almost 30, like what's the goal? Where am I trying to go? And then, you know, family and friends are always like, oh, you know, like do what you love, like follow your dreams. And then that's like, you know, easier said than done. But then it also made me panic because I was like, I don't have any dreams. And then that was like what really kickstarted this crazy thing for me because I was just like, I don't even have any dreams. Like, I don't even know what like, you know, because some people like dream that they'll someday open a restaurant or like they'll move to Bali or I don't know, they have some far-fetched dream. And I like didn't have any. So I just spent like a week feeling really sad or just like confused why I didn't, because I think I'm a very passionate, like driven person, but I don't have like clear set dreams. So anyways, I realized that the 3 dreams that I kind of had things, and I like define them as like things that I've kind of wished or like wanted for more than 10 years, just like maybe in the background even. And doing an Ironman was one of those. So in high school, I ran my first marathon, and the varsity soccer coach, he had like, everyone was like, oh, you should talk to him because he runs marathons. So I was chatting with him and he was actually an Ironman athlete. So that was the first time I'd ever heard of an Ironman. And I think that planted a seed a long time. I was like 16, 17. So for a long time I had been like, someday I'll do that. And so I think earlier this year, I just realized like, it's probably now versus later. It'll be harder once I have kids. So I don't have kids yet. So it's like, probably sooner is better than later.
Might as well do it, yeah. What's the plan then for the next 6 months, let's say, sports-wise and the company-wise?
Man, I wish I had a better answer that didn't show that I'm not such a good planner these days. My real goal is just to like, I really have to switch gears and focus on my race because it really does matter to me a lot. And I think that it's really taken like, you know, a back seat for key values. Like key values has just been like all consuming. So I'm trying to shift gears and make sure that I'm like really doing the training, focusing on nutrition, like foam rolling and stretching enough, which is like, I've not been doing that at all. So bad, so bad. I'm like embarrassed to say this out loud. I hope no one who like isn't like a triathlete is hearing this, because they'll be so.
Because of everyday people, everybody has their own thing and they're struggling.
But yeah, I mean, the goal is just to continue growing key values. I had some, growth goals, like in terms of traffic. I was hoping to hit 2,000 sessions a day for like a solid week without too much effort. And that is turning out to be pretty challenging, guys. Pretty challenging to get users to your site consistently. And then after that, I want to switch to like monetization. As much as I love, like at some point, girls got to eat. I got to make some money. The goal is obviously to make key values a revenue generating business. So yeah, I have runway though, and until I, complete the race, I think I'll just continue focusing on growth. But then after that, I'll switch gears and start charging for my service and for the work of helping, depending like the varying levels of getting teams onboarded. And then, yeah, I think it's kind of like, we'll see how it goes from there. I still have I think there's still a lot for me to learn in terms of how, like the different ways to charge. Like in the beginning, I was thinking about doing a monthly subscription. It's like, like a job board. You have people, is that my computer? People pay X dollars for them to just post their, I'm sorry, I'm closing these windows, to post their profile. And then there's obviously the more lucrative option is to get paid by placement. So if someone gets hired through key values, recruiters make, sometimes it's like 20%, 25% of the first year salary. There's like all sorts of contracts that recruiters have with companies. But in some way, so I'm still kind of like even soul searching a little bit about which one feels right, because I think part of the reason why recruiting is so broken is because as a recruiter, you're motivated to place people, make sure that they stay there for 3 months, sometimes 6 months, but mainly it's like a 90-day or some period like that. And then a lot of recruiters end up trying to poach those people and then have them sign to another company so that they can because that's how they make money, by placing them at different companies. So it's like, I feel in some ways like that's part of the problem, and so I feel, I'm not sure if I just need to figure out if doing that same model is appropriate for key values.
Is there, are there any advisors that you like commenting that with? Are you getting some feedback from other people within the industry, or maybe just have gone through that stage of being a free service and then trying to monetize?
I mean, yeah, lots of companies are a free service and then flip the switch at some like later down the road. I get advice honestly, from a lot from the internet and people that I've met through like indie hackers or Hacker News, Reddit, Twitter. Twitter's been phenomenal. And then of course, like, many of my friends have, are YC founders, previously YC founders. And then every company that I profile, they have opinions. They have existing contracts with, third parties, or maybe they're just transitioning from using an external recruiter to hiring an internal one. Some of the teams that are bigger have like a full-fledged HR team, and they have a lot of opinions and comments and advice. So I'm hearing, it's like I'm not, I don't know if I said this, but I don't have a background in HR or recruiting, so I'm learning this as I go. But it's been pretty interesting just hearing where people stand on it. But everyone agrees that it's not a great process. Like, it's definitely broken. Everyone agrees on that for sure.
Yeah, hiring is such a big pain, especially in the startup and tech world.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, you mentioned something, and I think I read about it as well, but I'm just not sure. I want to ask you about that. Did you fund yourself, or did you rely on external funding when you were starting?
No, yeah, I'm totally self-funded. I kind of knew, so I was kind of saving, honestly, to like maybe like potentially someday buy property in San Francisco, because that's like a 10-year dream. It's so expensive here. And then also just like saving for the future. So, and then also like potentially to start a business someday. I didn't really know, but basically since I started freelancing, I was saving money. And then I think like a year into that, I started feeling more sure that I wanted a cushion for something, like to take some type of risk. I wasn't quite sure, I didn't have an idea. I didn't feel confident like starting a business at all, or like building a product all on my own. None of that, none of that was in place yet, but I still kind of felt like I wouldn't regret saving money, So yeah, I spent a lot of time saving money. And then like near to the end where I started to feel like it was like more possible, I was already living very frugally and trying to I would like double up on clients. Yeah, I don't remember exactly. There was like 1 month, maybe it was this year, January or February, I just worked like nonstop. And it was like January, there was like all the holidays and whatnot. And I just like grinded it out. I had 2 full-time jobs basically, trying to save money.
Wow.
Well,
it's a good approach if you want to self-fund something and not rely on external influences.
Yeah, so so this is like an interesting, I'm not sure if I hadn't really decided if I was going to say this or not, but maybe I just will. So I actually applied for YC, and I got invited for an interview, and I've just been thinking like it's weird because before I applied, I was very like, I want to be bootstrapped, I want to be self-funded, I want to, I have runway. So it's just interesting because I have 5 days until my interview, and I'm like yeah, anyways, I'm not sure when you're publishing this. I don't know if this is a good idea for me to say this, but like I have some reservations about whether or not this is the right fit for me to take money at all. I don't need it yet, but of course someday, yeah, anyways, I'm still working this out, but.
So the plan is just to see if they'll accept you and then make that decision then.
Yeah, and also, I mean, obviously I just want to be upfront with them as well about, yeah. So. I think so before I learned how to code, I worked at HomeJoy. I don't know if you guys have heard of HomeJoy, but I learned a lot from my experiences there. And I think in some ways, like honestly, like immediately following HomeJoy, I had some like strong biases about VC money and like having investors, just because I felt like that really shaped the way the company was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm still new to this space and thinking about this, so I'm still, yeah, I'm still forming opinions, I suppose.
Just figuring out stuff as they come.
Yeah, like just full disclosure, I don't have it. Yeah, I'm not sure yet.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it also depends on like the type of business, right? Like some business you need capital. Yeah. So, and I don't know if Key Values requires it just yet. Obviously, with capital, I could grow it much faster. But yeah, so I think it's also funny because this is like the first product that I've launched. I think there's a lot of me wanting to just learn it the hard way, because that's, yeah, like I want to make the mistakes and realize like this strategy failed, and I think I enjoy that part. And it feels different when it's your own money.
Yeah, I think I mean, I've been working only for startups since I started programming, and I can definitely see that it's not a decision that has to be taken lightly, whether you accept funding or you don't. So I think because it's easy when you have an idea, just say, okay, let's get some financing and then start working on it. But then that has effects in the long run. So it's really something important.
Yeah, and I've heard both sides. Like I've heard people who are like, oh no, like this is if you have the right advisors and investors, it's the best decision possible. But obviously, I'm in Silicon Valley. There's all these horror stories. There's lots of people that regret it, and it bites them in the ass later on. So yeah, I mean, of course, everyone has their own path, and it's different for everyone. It depends on like the timing, on the individuals involved, on the actual company, the industry, on the investors. It's like everything. There's so many factors, but it's definitely something to be thoughtful about and considering.
But, and we want to be thoughtful and considering of your time. So I would like to wrap it up. Thanks very much for being here.
Oh yeah, of course.
Where can people find out more about Key Values? Just drop out some handles, URLs, what you want to mention, so people can go and check it out. Yeah,
so the website is keyvalues.io. Hopefully it's easy to remember. And then Twitter, it's my name, Lynne Tye. It's LYNNETYE. But on my website and on Key Values, I link out, so it's easy to find me. I love when people email me or like DM me. So I hope if people are interested, they can reach out I'd love to chat.
And are you open to European companies as well?
Yeah, I am. I'm actually, I have, Algolia, I think was my first European company. Their engineering team is based entirely out of Paris. So they have they have like an office here in San Francisco, but all of their entire dev team is in Paris. So that was the first one. And yeah, there's several others in London and Germany. There's many coming. There's like many that are in the works. So you'll see them over the next few weeks.
Amazing.
And we're catching up, yeah.
Yeah.
Europe is always slow, but gets there eventually.
Well, to be fair, I'm based here, so but
you got to start somewhere. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. This has been really fun.
Thanks, Lynne. Yeah, we're following your triathlon, your Ironman performance as well. So let us know how that goes as well.
There's pressure now. I have to complete it, right? Because you guys are okay.
Well, you said it now, so you have to.
I know. I'm gonna do it, guys. Can't believe it's so soon, but yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Good luck with the company, and yeah, let's have a chat in some time as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll be in touch for sure.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Have a great one.
It was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye, guys.